Excellent. Welcome, everybody. I am so glad to have you here with one of my favorite guest speakers and someone that I used to co-teach with. So thank you very much for joining us for the Tech Runway's April Entrepreneur Exchange. It should be very informational and maybe even entertaining, certainly educational. So tonight, I'll go ahead and jump right in. We've got special guest speaker Greg Shugar. He has got a lot of entrepreneurial experience. He is the founder of the Tie Bar and more recently a new Tie venture, among other things, like a men's bedding company and who knows what else, a serial entrepreneur at this point, whether he wanted to be or not, and part-time angel investor. He's going to tell us his story, talk about some things he's learned along the way, and we'll take some questions as well. Greg, welcome.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for inviting me back. You want me to go ahead and just sort of tell a little bit about my background and how I got into this?
Yeah, go ahead and jump right in.
Sure. So, well, I was a lawyer originally, practiced for about 8 years, hated it. Came up one day with an idea for a business, probably like a lot of people listening here. We all came up with ideas at some point. And my wife and I talked about it a little bit. And unlike some of our other discussions where we quickly dismissed the idea, this one sort of resonated and we talked about it a little bit more. And I just started researching online. That idea was as simple as selling neckties on the internet. And what happened was I was getting ready for work one day and my then, I think he was 3-year-old son, he's now a sophomore in college, but he was 3 then, threw cereal on my necktie and it got stained and I was frustrated as hell and said, why, now I got to go buy another necktie, another $50 down the drain. Our idea for the company wasn't necessarily just selling neckties online, but what we were thinking was, why are neckties so expensive? They don't look like they should be very expensive. They're a very small piece of cloth. And we were wondering, maybe they shouldn't be so much. So I went online and I did a little research of my own. Now, this is 2004. Internet isn't as robust as it is now. I stumbled upon a website called Alibaba. Alibaba is now a website that a lot of people do know. Back then, it was a lot less known. Alibaba, if you don't know, is, at least at its core, serves as like a business broker. It matches up suppliers or factories overseas to people who want to import around the world, mainly the United States and Europe. And so what we did is, or what I did was I did a lot of searching online and on Alibaba, and I was able to find a bunch of suppliers. And I did what anyone else would do because I had no experience in fashion. I had no experience in ordering anything from China. I just emailed them and I introduced myself, told them what my idea was, and asked them what pricing was. I quickly found out that silk neckties from China back in 2004 were about $2.10. So it hit me immediately that there was a lot of margin that these companies were working with. And I thought, well, what if we created a necktie brand where everything was cheap or inexpensive, and we came up with a price of $15. So we would price everything at $15. Now, I always feel like part of the beauty of this story is that my business idea wasn't really that special. It seems like a fairly obvious thing, sell something for cheap. But back in 2004, what we see now, which is a much more value-driven economy from a consumer standpoint, where consumers always want value. Believe it or not that long ago, certainly in 2004, it wasn't so much that way. So people would spend money on things without necessarily caring about the price. And in fact, neckties was almost a culture where the more you spent, the more you felt like you were getting in a necktie. I soon found out that that was a bunch of BS. Or if you were getting more in your necktie, so let's say you were getting Italian silk or you were getting something handmade in Italy, the benefits or the luxuriousness of the tie went unfounded or unseen by the customer. And so it didn't even matter to have these features. It's sort of like offering heated seats in a car for someone who lives in Florida. They'll never use it. What's the big deal? So we realized that really a tie only needed to be just good enough. And that's what we found from China. So we just emailed a bunch of factories and said, you know what, send us some ties. We set up a FedEx account, which takes one phone call, gave them our account number, and we started receiving ties from around the world, a bunch of samples. I've always felt that the people who start businesses are the people who don't think about it a lot. And that's what we did. We didn't really think about it very much. We made probably some bad decisions and just said, let's go ahead and do this. We didn't do a lot of research in the fashion industry. We didn't do a lot of research in e-commerce, which was still in its infancy back then. But after getting some ties, we said, okay, I'll design some ties. I'll draw them on a sheet of paper. I'll send them to the factory and they'll make it for us. So I did that. And in about 3 months, lo and behold, 6,500 neckties ended up in my garage. And I opened the box and they were there. And they were extremely ugly. My drawings were not understood very well. My drawings were bad. I had no understanding of textiles. I clearly had no understanding of how a necktie is made, how it's designed. And so I ended up with 6,500 really ugly ties. I actually considered getting rid of all of them and shutting down this whole idea. But at that point, we were invested in the company. On a side note, I'll tell you how we started the company financially. We did not raise money. We didn't really have money either, but we did have $50,000 of equity in our home. So we took a $50,000 loan. It was literally all the bank would give us. We took a second mortgage, got $50,000, and that's the money we used. So after spending, including shipping and duties, probably $20,000 on the neckties, we realized we had to go forward. We quickly hired a firm to develop a website for us. And we launched 6 months after coming up with the idea. And I mention that for a reason. I speak to a lot of budding entrepreneurs, people who want to start businesses. And there's a lot of people who never seem to get out of the gate. There's a lot of, what do they say? Paralysis by analysis. There's a lot of overthinking, people who like to talk, who don't really necessarily act on their ideas. And we did not do that. We did act on our idea. We moved forward quickly and we launched the company. Now at this point, we had 2 little kids. My wife was, of course, staying home with them. I should say, of course, but she was staying home with them and of course would help with the business while I was still practicing law. I would come home though at night. I'd come home late because most lawyers work late, put them to bed, ate dinner with them, and then sort of worked on the business at night. And I did that for a year. We got our big break about a year in. The reason why I did this for a year is because we got this big break. What that was I had been reaching out to fashion editors of newspapers and magazines every single night with press releases. I must have hit up literally 100 or 200, I don't even know, people that I found on the internet who had written about fashion. There really weren't even blogs back then. There may have been a couple, but for the most part, I was hitting up editors of newspapers and magazines. And I introduced our company and I tried to sell them on the idea that you could not tell the difference between our $15 necktie and a $50 or a $75 necktie. Again, even as I tell this story, I'm well aware that it is not the most exciting business idea. But we were lucky enough, and the Chicago Tribune's fashion editor called me after getting my press release and said, I want to hear more about your story. So I told her everything. I told her you can't tell the difference between our ties and a $50 tie. I am sort of fast forwarding over one part, which was we started to get design right. I had hired somebody part-time to help us design some ties in that first year. And so as we slowly sold the ugly designs that I first came in, I reinvested and bought some new designs, this time created by our designer. And our ties started to look better. So now I was sure that our quality looked good, our look was right. And so when I sent it over to the editor of the Tribune, I felt confident that that she would like them. So she actually interviewed some random men and put in front of them our $15 tie, a $75 tie, and a $175 tie. And the crux of the article was guys couldn't tell the difference, which was in essence our very business plan. And so she ran this article. It was on the front page of the Sunday fashion section, and it blew up our business overnight. So the day before, we had 9 orders, which for us was a typical day about a year into this business, about 9 orders. I think we did maybe $200 or $300. And then the next day, we did 206 orders. And I believe we did over $10,000 that day. Literally in one day from one article, that's what happened. The day after, we were still strong. We did 180 something orders. I can't remember the number. And the momentum really never ended. That article actually got picked up by the Denver Post. It got picked up by a newspaper in Maine. And it started popping up on the internet, and blogs, smaller blogs, which existed at the time, were writing about us. And about a year into the business, my wife looked at me and said, you know, we made more money in the last month as our tie business than you did as a lawyer. Why don't you quit? So I quit. Best day of my life. From that day forward, I ran the business full time. And over a period of 8 more years, we continued to snowball. We got better with design. We hired a new designer. We found a better factory. We started getting featured not just in newspapers, but we started getting featured in magazines. Our big break came in 2009, where we were featured in GQ magazine, which was pretty much the holy grail of men's fashion. That led to stylists from Hollywood calling us, who asked us to send them ties so their clients can wear our ties on the red carpet and on TV appearances. We got in other magazines like Esquire and Vogue, and it really started to snowball. By 2012, so this was year 8, one of those celebrities called us and said he wants to do a collaboration with us where he would design a series of bow ties and sell them, with the proceeds going to support marriage equality, which was not legal at the time in the United States, which it is now. His name's Jesse Tyler Ferguson. He's an actor on Modern Family. He's the redhead. And he and his husband created this foundation. We designed bow ties for us. And in September of 2012, he sat on the red carpet at the Emmys with a microphone in his hand and introduced his new line of ties with the tie bar. It was an incredible moment for us. We looked back, thought about how we were sitting in our basement coming up with this idea just 8 years prior. And now we're sitting on national news on the red carpet being announced by an Emmy Award-winning actor. A few months later, we even got a phone call from Dwayne Wade's agent. And within about a month, we signed a deal with him, something very similar. We sold the business in year 9. People always ask me why, and it was because everything went right for us in 9 years. It seemed like we had the best string of luck. So I felt like tempting fate was not the right idea. And things couldn't get better. So to me, that was when you sell the business. We hired an investment banker. We had a lot of interest. We did a lot of pitches. They took literally all day. Each pitch was about a 7-hour pitch. And in April 2013, a private equity company bought us out. So that story, you know, we were one of the very first menswear fashion brands that were built online. We built it at a time where e-commerce was still young, and this concept of, I'm sure a lot of people have heard it, direct to consumer. We were one of the first direct to consumer brands, meaning that we didn't sell wholesale. We didn't sell to stores. We sort of did. We sold to Nordstrom towards the end and stuff, but we were really built on the internet. We became the largest necktie brand on the internet by 2013. And so we sold it. So we sold it to a company. I sat out for 5 years, meaning that I had a non-compete. I couldn't work in men's fashion. So I had sort of another premonition come my way when my wife asked me to go buy bedding for our new home. And I went to the department stores at the mall, and all I could find is pastel colors and lace trim and stuff that really didn't appeal to me, and felt like there really wasn't enough, there weren't enough options in bedding. And so I came up with this idea of, in essence, taking menswear style, fashion, and putting it on the bed. So I have a couple partners. One of them is the husband of the actor from Modern Family, his real life husband. He called me up. He talked about me working on a new business. I told him my idea, and he said, let's go. So the two of us and a third partner started this business. That business is called Thread Experiment. Thread Experiment's now been in business for 6 years. We sell bedding online. Again, we do sell solids, but we really try not to focus on solids, and we certainly don't focus on pastel coloring and what we call more feminine style bedding. We try to stick with neutral colors, and we get our inspiration for our designs from menswear. finally, I guess 2 years ago, an old competitor called me right after my non-compete ended and said they wanted out of their tie business, asked me if I'd be interested in joining them as a partner. I went to go visit. I met everybody. I came home. I said, I'll buy the company outright for half the price. They took it. They didn't even counter. I was a little shocked. And so I bought this old competitor of mine. That company is called Beau, Ties of Vermont. It's actually a 28-year-old business in Vermont. It was a similar story where a husband and wife started a tie company, except they did it 11 years before we did. And they everything they do though is made in the United States. I actually love the business for so many reasons, but one of the things that really attracted me was it was a new challenge for me. I was no longer selling the cheapest product. I now have to figure out how am I going to sell a product that's a little more expensive, but has a different angle, that angle being made in the USA. So we have a whole cut and sew team out in Vermont. I travel there about once a month. I am the CEO. I work as hard as I ever have. I will tell you when the pandemic hit, as you can imagine, the neckwear business, which was already struggling, got worse. Men stopped buying ties, stopped wearing ties, and we quickly pivoted into masks. Now, right now, we look at so many places where you can buy masks. You can literally buy masks at a gas station and anywhere from the Gap to to Macy's and wherever makes masks. And so it doesn't sound that novel, but we were truly one of the very first. It was in early March when they started talking about the need for masks or whether or not we need masks. And I quickly got on the phone with my supplier. I actually started with our seamstresses. I asked if they could make them. And the truth is they could, but it was taking them 20 to 25 minutes per mask. And I knew we were going to need a lot more than that. I only had 12 seamstresses. So if you did the math, it was something about 3 to 4 dozen a day. And I knew that that wouldn't be enough. So we went overseas. We designed them. I had my seamstresses come up with the pattern. We certainly do all the designs for them. And we introduced masks in mid-March, way before anyone else did, or maybe the third week of March. And we sold out 600 masks in 40 minutes. I ordered more immediately. We sold out of 2,000 of them when they arrived in 2 hours. I ordered another 20,000 masks. And for a long story short, in a period of 12 months, we've sold well over 1 million masks now. It's actually brought my production team back, believe it or not, because we have about 150,000 brand new customers. And so we've introduced them to our other products. We started making masks to match our bow ties and our neckties, which for some people it may not be their style, but for our quirky customer, worked great. So they were buying these matching bow tie and necktie mask sets, even though they didn't even need them. They just found them to be pretty novel. And it got everybody back to work. So I had furloughed everybody in mid-March. And not only were we able to bring all of our workers back, we're now up about 14 or 15 new employees on top of it. We quadrupled in size in the last year, and we are in the middle of sort of a pivot where I'm sticking with the neckwear industry. We're still going to do bow ties and neckties, but we're now moving into more female products. We were learning that women buy masks, not men. And so all of our 150,000 new customers, about 90-something% are women. So we're trying to start create new products that are for women. And what I did was I had my seamstresses say, tell me what you can make. So even though they weren't as busy, I kept them busy by basically product development. They came up with a bunch of ideas ranging from tote bags to wristlets, to headscarves, to scrub caps, you name it, they were coming up with it, kippas. And so we've been able to keep everybody busy and everybody working through this time. So it's actually been a lot of fun. I've probably been more entrepreneurial in the last 12 months than I was since I started my first business. So that's kind of my long story. It feels long anyway. I'm happy to answer any questions. I do teach the entrepreneurship boot camp, or I have a couple times. And what am I teaching in the fall?
Something else.
Something else. So I actually have, I will tell you through all this, I think I have a very unique look at business that you may not hear about from a lot of people. And it's very current because right now I'm knee deep in e-commerce. I'm knee deep in retail. And a lot changes from year to year. It's really quite amazing how much retail has changed, not just since 2004 when I started, but even since 2013 when I exited my first business. It's like almost a completely different landscape of what's going on. So anyway, I'm happy to answer any questions or, I don't know, do anything else.
Sure. So as Jessica said, go ahead and utilize the chat. I'll be monitoring that. Greg, you can glance at it too, but I can kind of summarize that stuff. But I've got a question. Teaching entrepreneurship, I know exactly what you're talking about because I try to teach digital. You've got to be doing digital marketing. It changes all the time. It's a real pain to kind of keep up with. So, key points, key tips. How do people find your mask? Was that just an email list? I wouldn't have thought to go to the place that I buy ties, but you
Right.
sold out right away. Talk a little bit about digital marketing, what the landscape looks like, key points you've learned, and how you've done this.
Well, I mean, this started, because we started early, we sort of had a head start. You may remember that when masks started, it felt a little bit like a scavenger hunt of like, how am I going to go find the masks now for myself? Everyone was told there was a shortage, and so when I quit, I actually I did what I always do, which is I utilize all the free stuff first. So I posted something on LinkedIn, and I posted that we were selling masks. Now I post. I'm fairly frequent. I'm fairly active on LinkedIn. I try to post about once a week. And I posted that we had masks, and my average post may get 2,000 views. My post that we had masks got 50,000 views. It kept getting shared. It kept getting commented on. It just started to snowball. So we started actually getting, believe it or not, customers just from a personal LinkedIn post that cost me nothing. We did email our customers. We actually stayed in contact with our customers during COVID when sort of everything literally was shut down. I had my graphic artists still send emails. And what we were doing was, instead of sending emails, trying to sell stuff, we were trying to send positive stuff. We were so desperate for good news back then. It's hard to remember, but we used to come up with this email that really had nothing to do with our company, or not a lot to do with it, and had more to do with just positive news or good news that everyone needed. One of those things was that my seamstresses, while furloughed, took our unused cotton fabric and made masks for local Vermont old age homes, senior living homes. Again, they were able to do it on their own. They could make masks, albeit smaller. And so we posted that story, or we sent that story to our customers, and we got so much feedback. Why aren't you guys making masks for us? Because everyone was desperate for it. And we were already in the process, basically, of making the masks. So when they came out, we knew there was going to be demand. I had no idea just how much demand. So that started really, being the first to market had a lot to do with it. But the truth is that, within a month, we were now in a flooded industry. And so how do you stand out from that? What I did is I went all in. Most companies were selling anywhere from, let's say, 4 to 10 different styles of masks. That was it. That's not how I do things. We started with 6 designs, but I quickly went to 24, quickly went to 50, and then went to 100, probably within a month. So we became the company that offered the most amount of designs of masks. I also realized that all of our customers were becoming women for the first time. And so our masks, which were originally designed using men's style fabric, similar to Thread Experiment, I was trying to, do men's masks, whatever that would be. I noticed all these women were customers. And so we started doing a lot more floral prints, and we did more pastel colors, and we just did more, let's call it, feminine designs. And those started to sell better. Then we introduced the matching mask and bow tie. That no one did that. So people like to share that. Again, if you went back to the sentiment of now April of 2020 or May of 2020, everybody's down in the dumps. So if you could post a picture of yourself wearing a mask with a matching bow tie, it was something people wanted to spread and share. And we got a ton of that. So that was a big way of doing it. And then I started going all in on spending. I'm now at a point where I spend anywhere from $10,000 to $12,000 on Facebook a day. a day. I spend $10,000 to $12,000. Now that inched up. I was spending $300 a day early on, which felt like a lot, which is a lot, by the way. It's $9,000 a month in ads, but we were getting really good return. So whenever you have good return on marketing, you keep turning up the volume. You don't just rest on your laurels. You keep spending. Eventually you hit the point of diminishing returns, but you keep going. And I just kept going. We were acquiring 20 to 30 new customers a day. That was fantastic. At our peak, we were acquiring 900 new customers a day. How can you not do that, right? Because I look at a customer as I take them and I put them in my pocket. Every time there's a new customer, I have them in my pocket. Now, when I need to go sell something else, I have all these guys in my pocket, and I can market something else toward them. And so I'm thinking, there's no other time where a company like mine is going to acquire 900 customers in a day. I'm all over it. And now, when we're selling tote bags and wristlets and these other products I described, I have an audience. We launched tote bags. We sold 120 in the first day. That's a lot of tote bags. And it's only because we had acquired them all during the mask period of our company, which is still going on, sadly. Anyway, so it's a long answer to your short question there, Kevin.
Yeah, it's a great answer. And I got a couple more, but Michael's got a question. He's an attorney, in-house corporate general counsel for 23 years. He wants to know how your legal background and expertise has helped you along the way.
So Michael will totally get this. When you get to law school, you get reprogrammed and you're taught how to think. And it sounds like a very vague concept, but it really is a practical concept. It changes how you think. So as far as a legal thing, so I think maybe twice in my business career have I sent a demand letter. I think I filed our trademark, the original trademark. So as far as legal skills, that's what I've used, virtually nothing. But when you go to law school, and certainly when you're a lawyer, you're taught on issue spotting and problem solving, and basically get all the crap that doesn't matter and get it out of the way and get right to the point. You learn the ability to analyze risk and then make the decision whether or not you want to take that chance. But at least you understand everything. You become resourceful. I mean, I'm extremely resourceful right now. That's like my greatest skill is I'm resourceful. I completely credit my legal career to that. I was not resourceful beforehand. So I think you find a lot of lawyers as entrepreneurs, and I think the reason is because of the training that you get as a lawyer, but again, not the legal training. It's really the legal thinking. And I can't see Michael. I bet you he's nodding his head.
Yeah, he totally agrees.
So, oh yeah, I see it now. Right.
Next we've got no. He said in the chat. He said he totally agrees.
No, I see it. I didn't see it at first.
All right. So Fred says, "Are you doing Amazon too? I remember you used to have a take on whether or not to sell on Amazon, other retailers on the internet. Where do you stand now? How do you manage that?" Great question.
Amazon is a complicated question. And the answer is sometimes you should, sometimes you shouldn't, sometimes you sort of should, sometimes you completely should. Amazon is there. Whether or not you want to acknowledge it's there, it's there. It is your competitor. No matter what you're selling, it's your competitor. And by the way, it's your biggest competitor. I look at it as a second website for us. So we put everything on Amazon. Now, are there people, do I lose business to myself basically? Because I have to pay 15% to Amazon for every sale, right? So I give them free shipping on Amazon. I do that because that's what the Amazon customer expects is free shipping. So am I losing money if they know I have a website, but then check out Amazon? Yeah, I am. But what also will happen is if they go to Amazon looking for me, they're going to see a bunch of other mask companies. And there's a very good chance that they're only going to buy on Amazon. So they might as well buy me. It's also customer acquisition. Now, you don't get their email when you sell on Amazon. You don't get any of their contact information. You do get their address, of course. And if you solicit them directly, you actually can get kicked off Amazon as a seller. So you just kind of hope, now our masks are labeled, the packaging's labeled with our company name and our website. So you hope that you convert these Amazon people to your website. There's people who say that you should list a limited number of SKUs on Amazon so you can get them in the door. And then when they want to shop more on Amazon, they realize that your entire collection is not there and they can only get it on your website. So it's a way to incentivize them to get off Amazon. That's a good strategy. It's not one I'm taking right now. I think there's a right time for that. But to answer your question, we do sell on Amazon, and that's why. And anyone who sells anything in retail who says we are Amazon, what's the word? We're not subject to Amazon, or there's a term I can't remember right now. Anyway, is full of shit. That word I remember. Every retailer has to deal with Amazon.
Great question, great answer. So
Amazon.
I've got another one, and keep filling them in the chat there. Price. So you're really in that price area, which I oftentimes encourage entrepreneurs not to do as they're first starting, but you saw an opportunity there. There was a genuine there, a lot of margin. Now you've transitioned, right? So price is sort of straightforward. You might sort ties by price. There's the tie bar. Hey, these are a great deal, a decent quality. Now you're really in the quality and or value marketing game. What are some of the differences, and what have you learned transitioning to that?
I think what you have to do is you take what your strengths are and just highlight those. So I always say in all these classes I've taught or whatever, that these guest speaking things, is if you're made in the USA, which we are, and a lot of companies are, if you're made in the USA, that better be something that you shout loud and proud. That's got to be all over your website, all over your materials. It can't be something you hide. By the way, if you go to our website now, you don't see it as much. And the reason is because we sell so many masks and they're not made in America. I don't want to mislead people. Now, certainly on our product pages for ties and bow ties and so forth, we say we're made in the USA. Whenever we do an email campaign or we do any sort of marketing for our American-made products, it's everywhere. That's your competitive advantage. But generally speaking, that's what you're really supposed to do. That's the advice I would give for people who aren't in the value game. I mean, you have to always figure out, how are you differentiating yourself? You're right. Price is the worst. It's the race to the bottom. We did it with our first company because we were in an industry where nobody wanted to be near the bottom. So we were like, fuck it, we'll be in the bottom. There's no one here. I'll be here by myself. Usually it's a very crowded place at the bottom, but it wasn't neckties. So that's why we did it. And you're right. Yeah, you want to be careful in getting there. But on the other hand, you can't, I strongly discourage anybody for saying, I'm going to be in the luxury market, because all the luxury brands are there with literally years and years and years of what's called brand marketing. And that costs millions and tens of millions and hundreds of millions of dollars. Gucci doesn't get away with selling a $3,000 purse. They do get away with it for a reason. They've put a lot of money and a lot of costs into brand marketing, a lot of time. So as a startup, you just don't have those funds. And so it's very hard to convince a total stranger to buy your $3,000 purse. I don't care if it's made of 24 karat gold. It's not going to get sold. Be an ugly purse too, by the way.
Nice. All right. So add some more questions into the chat. In the meantime, I'll ask another one. One of the things that comes up, given the stage of some of the companies that I'm sure are in the audience and that I have a tendency to work with, what did your launch consist of? You mentioned, 6 months in, you and your wife, you launched that, but you didn't have a lot of funding. Did you have a massive launch? What did your launch consist of for the tie bar?
I took everybody. I remember I had Microsoft Outlook at the time. I looked up everybody in my contacts, which basically was, like how they pre-populate, like you type A and all your A contacts, or shouldn't even say contacts, all the people you've emailed previously come up. So I went through the alphabet and I created some, this is sort of before iContact and MailChimp and all these email campaign softwares. I went through one by one, and I remember that Outlook had like a restriction on how many email addresses you can put in a single email. So I had to set up like literally, 15, let's say, emails with like 50 names, and I put them in the BCC, which you got to do. By the way, I don't recommend this. This is what I did. And I emailed and I said, hey guys, my wife and I just started this new business and we'd love for you to check it out. And, I think a lot of people support you when you're doing that sort of thing. There was no Facebook back then, or if you weren't in college, there was no Facebook. So we didn't have that opportunity. Certainly that's what you would do now. You tap into all your free resources is the lesson. You have a lot. You have your personal social media. I actually think if you know you're launching a business, that you actually prepare for your launch to your friends, meaning that you for the months leading up to it, you are friendlier, you're nicer, you like more things, you comment more, you become friends with more people, you link up with more people on LinkedIn, and you prep it a little bit. You become the active guy who's very supportive and likable, even if it's not your personality like me. And so when you finally launch, you get people who really are listening and watching and rooting for you. And it's free. I mean, you tap into every free resource you have, and your personal email or your personal social media is free. Now, do I think you should be one of those annoying people who only post about their business on their personal? I personally don't recommend that, but I think everyone's sort of entitled to a free shot when you're launching your business. You're entitled to say to your friends, "Hey, look what I've done," and maybe another one or two. So anyway, that's kind of what I would recommend for a launch, and you sort of you exhaust everything that you have that's free.
Another great suggestion. So here's an interesting question from the chat. If you were going to launch a commodity in today's world of the internet, what platform would you focus on if it were older women customers? And I would just jump in before you do. You can think about it. Different platforms. It's nice. You can sell right through social media now. It's amazing. A lot of them are relatively easy to test at lower cost to get some feedback and see what type of signals you're getting back. Again, inexpensive, not necessarily free, but maybe some free options. And then again, inexpensive, which you might be able to scale up. But Greg, what do you think?
So when you say platform, are you talking about an e-commerce platform? Are you talking about a marketing platform? What's the platform here that you're specifying?
I'm sort of guessing we'll wait and see what else shows up. That it means, the channel in which you sell, you can process a payment and make a sale right through Instagram, right? Without going to Amazon or your website or anywhere.
Yeah, yeah. I see the answer of yes, but I asked an either or. I'll try to address both. I think you need to use an e-commerce platform. Shopify is probably the most popular one. It's most popular for a reason. It's got the most amount of widgets and apps. I shouldn't say widgets, but apps that you can be using. A lot of them are free or inexpensive. And it's just sort of the easiest way to enter the e-commerce world. I do not recommend like limiting to selling on a Facebook shop or an Instagram thing. I think people judge you by that. I think like I used to, when I was a lawyer, my entrepreneurship used to shine through. And I remember talking to a partner who said, "We don't need a website. Nobody Googles for a lawyer. I need a lawyer. Let me go find someone." And we were representing larger corporations. I said, "Yeah, you're right. It's true. But what happens when you meet somebody and you tell him who you are and he wants to go look you up when you get home from wherever, the golf course or some party, and he wants to sort of like just see who you are? If you don't have a website, you know what how that reflects on you? It makes you guys look cheap and unprofessional and not progressive. So I think the same is true with selling e-commerce, commodities or widgets. You don't have a website, like an e-commerce platform. I don't know. Would you trust somebody who doesn't even have their own website but is trying to sell stuff on the internet? I personally would not. So I think you definitely need an e-commerce platform. And again, Shopify seems to be the most popular one. There's WooCommerce and there's some other ones. But Shopify is popular as it gets. And a lot of the apps are developed for Shopify. So that it's the one to use, and it's relatively reasonably priced.
That's where I was going to say, a little bit more than a decade ago was probably my first experience with Shopify, and I couldn't do that much. And it was like, well, should I really customize, hire some programmers, build my own? And I worked with some entrepreneurs who used it, and they kept adding features and then API plugins with other apps, just like on your mobile device. And it's like, well, now I can plug this in. Okay, we can still use Shopify. Now we can plug this and do that. And now it's really pretty robust. I can't imagine there's too much you'd want or need to do that you can't do or plug into in terms of data and analysis and everything you want to have kind of on the back end. I'll just add too, I'm sure Greg is very, very familiar with this, but not just having a website, but websites get dated. Websites change. They don't look now like they look like 10 years ago. And that's almost worse in my own opinion as a consumer than not having one. If you've got fantastic social media, it's really impressive. And that's where you want to process through or kind of get to people. I'm okay. So the students definitely are. They're great with mobile. If you have a website that looks like it's from 2003, it's very suspect. And you can tell, I'm sure you as consumers have gone to a website, maybe a personal one or a professional one, probably not a product one, and just thought, wow, this website looks old, the whole thing, the way it's designed, the graphic interface, all that stuff. So over time, you will have to update, modify, and make it better, but that's okay. It's something good to do.
Yeah, and that's just the expense. I mean, if you're, I used to write for Entrepreneur Magazine, and I wrote this article of like, you got to hire somebody to do your website. There are people who are like, I could do it myself. Why would you possibly want to do that? How do you expect to be a real company that does that and then design a website by yourself? The internet levels the playing field like no other way, meaning that if you want to compete with Macy's at Town Center Mall, forget it. What are you going to do? Build, like occupy a 50,000 square foot place and then fill it up? It's not going to happen. But you could create a website that kind of looks like Macy's, right? I mean, it really gives you a chance to look as professional and as good as any of the other leaders. So why would you not take that opportunity to do it? If you're not going to invest in your website, then you're not really an entrepreneur. I mean, that's the whole idea, is you got to spend some money and take some chances. And if you want to get into e-commerce, having someone build your website is like, the most necessary expense you're going to have.
Okay, one thing that consistently came up in sort of all of your stories, which I think is fantastic, there's so many free resources out there, is leveraging things that are free, things that are internal, things that you can do or you can figure out, or in some instances, things you think you can do, but then it turns out maybe not quite as much. So do you have any tips on sort of navigating, or have you gotten maybe better at being, what, this is not my expertise here, got to spend a little money, get a little help here. You don't let me try this. How have you done that, or how has that evolved in your kind of entrepreneurial journey here?
So I hope this answers your question. I used to do my digital marketing. You can do Google AdWords by yourself. You can do Facebook ads by yourself, but I guarantee you will not be as good as a firm, a person who's a professional. I mean, it's a major in colleges now. It's a profession. It's a real career. So, would you fill your own cavity if you had one? Like, you got to hire a professional to do your marketing. Can you do it? You can do it. You'll waste a lot of money. So they do charge their monthly retainer fee, but I guarantee that they will make that money back faster than you'll lose it if you do it yourself. Now, how do you find the right one? Different conversation. But that's probably one of the first things I'd say. Like, yes, there are people who, when you first start out, you do it yourself because you can't spend money. But if you're going to start putting real marketing dollars into digital advertising, you got to hire a firm. Does that answer you?
Yeah, I think so, especially in that area. But I also make kind of more in general, even things with design, when you're constrained by resources, as many of our entrepreneurs, maybe you've noticed that something that is core to the product that isn't your expertise, or different ways to get feedback. I know you mentioned you'd made those crappy designs. You got 6,500 of them, and maybe in retrospect, designer could have helped. How do you kind of just navigate overall? You like to do things, and I love the kind of using resources and using free stuff, but you want to balance it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, right. That was probably, in hindsight, that was a mistake. We got away with it because e-commerce was still in its infancy, and I think anybody who was willing to shop online may have not been a fashion maven back then. It was just some, middle-aged guy who needed to buy a few ties for work and saw $15 and was like, I don't care what it looks like. I just need to fill up my closet. One of the things we do that I see as an investor, I've met people who develop an app. They want to be, their product is an application for a phone, but they're not, or none of their co-founders are app developers. And I always say to them, what are you doing? You're going to be at the mercy of outside help constantly for your core product. What happens when it breaks down? What happens when you need emergency help because it's not working? You're waiting on some guy who could be either overseas or, no matter where he is, he or she may not be available to help fix your problem. So I always say that if you're looking to develop an app, you should find someone who does it and then give them founder's interest in the company. Make them a co-founder of the company, give them some equity interest, and put them on your team full time. If it's the core product that you're doing, in that case, an app.
A technology company will inevitably need a technologist, even for things as simple as hiring and any number of other things that I don't know. So I share that challenge. How important is it to find an advertising firm with experience with similar commodities, or are ad firms kind of agnostic to the product being sold? Well, I would say that's a really, and I'll just jump in since I started, but it's for Greg, whatever. In my experience working with a couple hundred ventures, they tend to have some expertise, and when they get too far beyond that, they can have real problems because it's not their expertise. Hence the word expertise. You can't be an expert in marketing everywhere. My own 2 cents is that I think digital marketing is evolving in such a way that it's becoming hyper-focused, and the methodology is very much unique to industry and specialization. There's a company locally that's been in the Inc. 500 the past 3 years in a row. Just rented 6,000 square feet in downtown West Palm, and they do digital marketing for dentists, but they're the best. For dentists, they dominate the dentist space. They know how to market digitally dental things. They get customer reviews. They get customer feedback. It's happenstance that that's the sector they started in, but they dominate it. Could they sell your commodity? Yeah, maybe, but it's not necessarily the expertise. And I think we'll continue down that path. Marketing different things will look different on the internet. Also, that it's really, really hard to find a firm. Look at analytics, ROI, make sure you're getting more in return than you're paying for. That can be hard to figure out in the short run. It should be very clear in the long run. But Greg, what do you think?
I agree with that. I think so. There's two parts to the question. Is like, how important is it? Or maybe there's only one question. How important is it? It is important, but I wouldn't get so granular with how specific you are. So, for example, like consumer goods, you could probably lump together. Non-essential consumer goods, professional services. You could probably. So, in other words, if I were a dentist, and I don't think there's just the West Palm Beach firm that would be able to help me effectively. I could probably find someone who might have sold other business services to people, lawyers or so forth. It would help, but to some extent, it really is like I think about the conversations I have with my firm on Facebook ads, and we talk a lot about audiences and how to get new audiences and how to analyze the data and how to analyze the engagement, the comments. And you may not, I mean, if someone understands how to use Facebook ads effectively or Google AdWords, I don't know how much they need to be like that much of an expert. I guess it just kind of depends. I might be a little more lenient than you, Kevin, but there certainly needs to be a certain level of expertise. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm very much forward looking, and I agree with you. Try this stuff yourself with small dollars, so at least you know the fundamentals, so you know the right questions to ask. So you
Yeah.
know that they're not targeting too narrow or too broad, and you can ask the right questions and understand the answers to those questions. Experiment and learn the fundamentals, or you may even have a difficult time analyzing who might not be a great partner for you. Even though you're hiring them, you should very much kind of think of them as a partner, as if it doesn't work out, you'll also be firing them, hopefully. With that, I think we've answered all the questions.